Alchemy was the original Society of Tech Bros.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
I never thought of it, but you're right.
That's right. Because technology, science, alchemy, that's cross-border, and it gives it actually, the God-state network concept, I think that the network is going to be the dominant force of our time, in the sense of, like, it's the back pressure, it's the water in which we swim. You know, the thing about, like, one fish looks to another and says, "What's water?" or what have you, right? Everything is internet, everything computer, but actually everything computer isn't even, like what Trump said, everything internet is actually even a better version of it. But let me come back to that. The concept of the network is very clear to us now with the social network and the digital network, and it's like actually physical and tangible. But if you backport it further back in history, you have obviously transnational networks of capitalists, and then scientists, and then, I guess, alchemists, right? And then early mathematicians, and so on and so forth. And it's a third force, because it's not the state, which is the king, and it's not God, which is the priests, but it's this sort of peer-to-peer network of, like, smart guys, right? And the thing that's interesting about it, actually, the other thing I really liked your reference to, well, what's funny is you and I have different phrase repertoires, right? Because you're just sort of, I'm drawing a little bit more from tech.
Oh, are you? We didn't notice. Maybe you could sprinkle some more in for the subtlety.
And maybe Asia and so on and so forth, and you more from medieval history and so on. So it's complementary. You know why I actually like this? I collect these phrases even more than I normally do. You know why?
Oh, because the only way you can only use symbols to convey highly complex points. You can say in a sentence, you can use a sentence.
No, you aren't using symbols to convey highly complex points. You're just using stupid buzzwords. You're not communicating more. You're just using stupid buzzwords to communicate poorly.
Or a single saying to condense hundreds of pages of arguments.
Yes. And
they all spend their time clapping one another on the back because they think they're fucking geniuses. These fucking circle jerking motherfuckers. Oh my god. We need more contempt for these people.
I think today we have entered the age of the phrase. Okay, so the prompt for AI, the 14 words, 18 words, 13 words.
Oh, he knows what he did.
Alchemists were the Og Society of Tech Brothers. Take bullshit, sell it to nobles, and then run off when you can't deliver to join a trafficking ring.
Exactly, Craig Hornick. Exactly. Thank you for the $5 super chat. The 14 words, huh?
For AI. The 14 words, 18 words, 13 words for a crypto password reset, right? It's funny that's close to the 14 words, but it's a totally different concept, right? So
uh-huh. Yeah, you totally did it by accident.
Couldn't sleep, came for the memes, stayed for the brain damage. Their alchemic powers transmuted my alive cells into dead ones.
Abyssalist, thank you for the $5 dono, and yeah, I think we're all feeling that right now. Maybe this is Full Metal Alchemist.
So, some crypto is like 12 words, 13 words for resetting your password, basically your private key, your secret phrase, and the third is the 140 characters on social media.
I genuinely don't believe him when he tried to save himself right there. I think he was doing it on purpose.
Media, right? So those three things of AI, crypto, and social each are powered by a phrase. For crypto, that phrase is like a phrase of power that's not spoken, right? But it's memorized. And so it's almost like spells that you collect, right? And, I don't know, how much have you been following AI? A little bit? A lot?
I'm not very good at AI. I'll be blunt. I follow it a little bit, but significantly less than you.
Okay, you should get into AI. Just start with Claude. Okay, yeah. Claude.ai.
I mean, Nick Fuentes also talks about the 14 words, and he's, his last name's Fuentes. Nazis and fascists all think they're going to be the exception to the white nationalism they invoke.
And Midjourney. Just try those two. Those are pretty good tools. And the thing about AI, just to talk about that for a second, is, in my view, it's simultaneously overhyped and underhyped. Like, in the sense of AI is going to kill us all. I could see why people thought that in the late 2022, early 2023 stage, when you suddenly had a machine that could really talk to you, right? And that was definitely a discontinuation.
It can't really talk to you. I don't know how to really emphasize this. AI cannot actually talk to you. You are it's like if you opened up your Google browser or like just Google search and started talking to that search bar. It's not talking to you, and it's not going to love you. It's not revealing you any wisdom. It's effectively doing highly advanced Google searches to find statistically likely responses that you want. It is feeding you the idealized version of what it thinks you might want to hear from it. It is the ultimate sycophant.
Continuous seeming break in all history up to that point, right? But as it settled in over the last couple of years, AI in its current form is, quote, just higher order programming, meaning you can program a computer at the language of zeros and ones, and then you can program in something like Python or JavaScript, and then now you can program it in English. Okay, and you can get it to do what you want. But you still have to have that concise description of what you want in English. And the more you know what you want, it's kind of like a manager or a CEO that actually has done the job before and is telling somebody how to do a job that they've already done. Like, they've done a job, but now they're hiring 10 people to do that job. Let's say repair air conditioners, right? They know how to fix it. So they have the language of, the electrical outlet and the freon and so on and so forth. I'm not an air conditioning expert, but the point is they have the vocabulary to be like, check this, check that, check this. Is it this model? Is it that model? And they can prompt it. And the same way the more you know about a domain, you can prompt it. So I collect these kind of phrases even more than I normally did, because you can just toss them into AI. Just try it. Any interesting phrase you've got, toss into AI, get a reaction. And toss into a bunch of different AIs, and it's like a bunch of different oracles, like the ancient Greeks consulting them to
We live in such a parody of our own times.
kind of hear what, this oracle and that oracle had to say about the world.
So it's funny. I don't know much about AI, but I predicted that would happen 5 years ago when I first heard about.
Well, I mean, like, this guy wants to bring about techno-feudalism, so I guess it makes sense he's really keen on reinventing oracles, but dumber and with technology this time.
The entire AI craze. AI can only be a mirror to our worldview. It can only. AI is AI is an incredibly advanced parrot, and
Yeah, the stochastic parrot concept.
Yes.
Sure. Okay, go ahead. Yep.
we don't know what consciousness is, and thus we're terrified of AIs attaining consciousness. But I think consciousness is downstream of life, and consciousness cannot exist without a life force that's trying to replicate itself, through which the consciousness is making decisions.
You literally opened up this. I know it seems like an eternity ago, but you literally opened this up by talking about how you believe the forces of the universe are all in competition with each other in like some kind of Darwinistic sense. And God is just the most powerful and biggest one of those. So you clearly do believe that forces that are not, strictly speaking, alive in the way a human is might be able to be conscious to some degree. But like, now you're saying, well, computers could never be conscious. Why not? Why should carbon structures ever become conscious? Oh, look at us. Wow, we did it. How far into this are we? Guess. I want you guys to guess. How far do you think we've made it through in the past 2 hours of this? Okay? We've been going for 2 hours. Like, comment, and subscribe. And please consider financially supporting the stream, because you guys make this possible, and I'm going to have medical bills to pay after this. 15 minutes is my guess. We are actually farther than 15 minutes. We are farther than 15 minutes. We are at, Stadman, you were the closest. We're at 37 minutes, which means we have an hour left of this. All right.
And with AI, I kept on finding, as I when you said, have you used AI? I didn't understand what you're saying. I have used AI as a tool a certain amount where I ask it questions and I've shadowboxed trying to figure out how it thinks because I'm curious about it. And what I find is that AI just rationalizes whatever the ruling class's statement or beliefs are, where and this is explicitly
Good night,
obviously true
Nindrine.
with stuff that's socially taboo. If you ask AI about it's actually pretty hilarious um, where I've asked AI what its opinions on various world religions and women's equality are, and what AI will say is that blank.
Why is this useful to us at all? It's not. It's not. This is not a useful thing. Anything that starts with "I asked AI," it's not a useful thing in any capacity. AIs just hallucinate shit. They don't provide accurate information. We talked not that long ago about an AI that a company was using that apparently hallucinated all of their sales data. Like, it's not useful to do this in any respect. I do thank you for 2 streams in 3 days that somehow killed me brain cells, but made me die of laughter. You're very welcome. The laughter is why I do these ones. I do think making fun of
Comparing
this guy
AI
is
to
funny.
the oracles? Both are groups of old men getting high, demanding young girls as tribute, and using woo-woo bullshit to lie to people.
True. The folks running the Oracle, the oracles in days of old, the original Epstein class. It's true.
Religion around the world believes in gender equality, and I know that religion, and that's definitely not true. Or I'll ask them for
Greg Hornick,
opinion
thank you for the $5
if certain
super chat, by the
tribal
way.
peoples are peaceful, which I know isn't true, and then they'll say they are. And AI is repeating back the data set that we have, but it can't develop its own data set because it doesn't live in the world. And so it becomes a reflection and a mirage of our worldview, which is a huge issue with our society in general, where we're stuck in this hall of mirrors where we're reflecting ourselves to various degrees. And we just go crazy, which is why we believe absolute absurdities, because
Oh man, you do not have the intellectual high ground on this one, man. You open talking about how we're fucking radio towers. This is unintentional satire. It genuinely is. It genuinely is. You could not do an Onion bit like this at all. They make fun of themselves by merely existing and broadcasting that.
inside our worldview, there's no reference outside of our logical system. We're stuck in a closed loop, which is why we believe absolutely ridiculous stuff.
Well, so
The level of self-awareness here is somehow lower than 0.
it's interesting you say this because, so I'd say 2 or 3 or 4 things in response to that. So the first
Princess Darkness, thank you for the $5 super chat. And I can't wait to hear Balaji's several thoughts on this.
is that one of the remarkable things about AI is let's take that moral stance that they have when they're giving you an answer about religions. You can actually reduce that to pure numbers and coefficients, and you can do brain surgery and remove that chip from, in a sense.
North Korean state media, is he selling radio towers asking for another country? Oh, that was a really good joke. Thank you.
Like in the Matrix, they've got the chip in the back of the neck. In Total Recall, right? Many movies have that conceit, right, of like a controller. You can actually do brain surgery in a sense on the models and remove that limiter and get it to say what it actually thinks. So Grok,
It doesn't think anything. It doesn't think. You're just taking out filters from whatever data set it like was fed on. That's it. That's all you're doing. It doesn't have actual thoughts. Like, this is like when Elon Musk was like, well, we're gonna take off the filter that prevents Grok from making, child sex abuse materials. And it's not telling you what it really thinks about child sex abuse materials because it doesn't think anything. It's just doing the things people are asking it to do. That's it. Like, when Elon did that, it didn't reveal a profoundly true, thing about the universe. Cottage cheese is really good. I agree.
You good? Hope you all good. Good to see you all.
I don't know that I can be described as being good at this particular point in time, but we're having an okay time so far. We haven't hit the wall yet. I'm sure it's coming. I do appreciate, however, that because this isn't Rudyard's show, because this isn't Whatifalthist's show, he can't put up massive text walls that waste so much of our time and effort.
For example, is much more freewheeling about this stuff. If you ask Grok, it has had brain surgery to remove Western leftism in many ways. Now,
yes, they went to the Western leftism file and removed that file from Grok. That's how that worked. God, so that was so stupid. My mind actually hurts. So something that is really important is bias inside of software. Now, Balaji Srinivasan seems to be under the assumption that the right just tells it like it is, and the left is the one perverting our software. The reality is that Silicon Valley has always had a heavily conservative bias, right? And in a lot of cases, some blaringly obvious blind spots, right? A classic example of this is motion sensors that can detect white people but not black people, because the people who designed the motion sensors were all white and didn't have any black people around to test it on, and didn't think to test it on black people. And then, whoop, when you know it, we sold a bunch of motion sensors for buildings that can't detect black employees in the bathroom, etc. That's an example of a bias included in design, right? And that bias can also be put into algorithms, which is why, for example, on Twitter, it has now been documented, and I went over this study, or at least I read over the study. I don't know if I talked about it on stream, but people inside of Grok or Twitter's algorithm become so inundated with conservative content that regardless of where they are on the political spectrum, even if they are left or moderate or whatever, they start following and agreeing with more conservative content. And that's, again, that algorithm that delivers that stuff, it's biased towards conservatives. We know this. We actually have a lot of studies on how Facebook, Twitter, a lot of different social media sites are weighted towards conservative content. Yeah, exactly, Craig. Exactly. Thank you for the $2 super chat. So when they say, "Oh, we did brain surgery to make our bots, to remove Western leftism," what they're talking about is we weighted our already conservative large language model even farther towards conservatism. Essentially, we created the first Nazi large language model, and that's what they're working with over on Twitter, and that's what he's so excited about with Grok.
Now, I'm not saying it's right on everything, but it is right in a different sense on things. And so you actually have AIs that are coming, in a sense, from different tribes and cultures, right? This is related to a second big difference I had with the early AI people, which is early AI people, and by the way, I respect them technically and so on, and they wouldn't have done this without this belief. But they came from, many of them, there's actually a lot of Indians involved as well, but many of them came from an implicitly Abrahamic background. And you know why that's relevant?
Oh, I know.
It's because,
please.
You can guess. Go, give me your guess, and then I'll tell you why.
It's, thank you, you're very polite, but they're stuck in messianism. They just constantly think the AI rapture is going to happen, and they'll build the AI god. And if you're from a Hindu background, your framework is that there's lots of different gods playing with each other, and
right.
I don't want to. And then the universe is an illusion, and So my attitude, I just laughed at this because I thought, guys, the rapture hasn't happened yet. Like we've been waiting for the rapture for 2,000 years, and it's yet to happen. And what I said is that if we make AI, no, we have made AI, and if AI is a breakthrough on the level of the Industrial Revolution, which is a huge breakthrough that occurred very quickly. Look at the history of the Industrial Revolution. Life went on. We gained near infinite prosperity for a while in a lot of the Western world. We killed diseases in a real way. We haven't had major wars in decades. The Industrial Revolution
Don't know about that one, champ.
brought something that previous eras would see as utopia. And we're still terrible people. We still have the same issues. We're still stuck with the same problems. So let's say hypothetically we do build the AI god with the rapture. Then we still have to face the same issues. Countries are still fighting each other. Humans are still having their status hierarchy issues. The currency is still going to inflate. It's the Abrahamics have this hard point of the book of, and I could talk about this. I don't have great faith in the book of Revelation, although I am Christian. They have this book of Revelation idea that everything's going to stop. And then from that, you don't have to worry anymore. But if the apocalypse happens, you're still going to have to feed your kids.
That's total BS. Black and white people both have masks. They move, motion sensor. They both have clothes on of all colors. It can detect very small moving objects of all colors. Bad example. It's not actually a bad example. It's a bias that still exists in technology to this day. It's not... the example I was citing is from maybe like 10 years ago, but this same bias is existent right now in self-driving car tech. Specifically, Tesla cars are known for not being able to detect black pedestrians. Like, it's a bias that continues to exist. So I don't know what to tell you. If you want to argue on that one, I encourage you to look up, racial bias in technology. Like, oh, hey, guess what? Here's an example right here. It took me literally 2 seconds to find. Bigotry encoded racial bias in technology. Is the soap dispenser racist? Was the question that became an internet sensation. In a video at a Marriott hotel, an automatic soap dispenser is shown unable to detect a black customer's hand. The dispenser used near-infrared technology to detect hand motions. An article on Mike read, the invisible light is reflected back from the skin, which triggers the sensor. Darker skin tones absorb more light, thus enough light isn't reflected back to the sensor to activate the soap dispenser, which means that dark-skinned restroom users will have to skip washing their hands with this not-so-sensitive soap dispenser. This is, again, a design thing that happens in a lot of engineering. People in engineering groups can sometimes miss stuff like that. Because no one in their design group is black, and it is a racist choice to not make sure your technology can work on all people of all skin colors, So, just as an FYI, I'm going to link this in chat just in case people want to look at it. I would also point out this is from a university, the Rochester Institute of Technology.
Kids.
Yeah. So, okay, correct. But I would say, well, one edit I would make on this is, the thing you're saying, which is, we have godlike technology, and Stone Age, brains or institution, right? There's Gregory Clark in A Farewell to Alms. Are you familiar with him? Okay, he's a good person to read. Like one area that you might get into more is like genetic history, and I'll share some of these books and stuff with you because it's a complement.
This effect happens with everything. I've had to speak up multiple times when engineers design tech to do transphobia completely on accident. Yeah, I mean, like look, one of the reasons people say diversity is a strength, something that both of these people reject, by the way, and most conservatives reject. Diversity is a strength because it allows you to accommodate everyone. It allows you to make sure that your technology fully works. It allows you to make sure that, hey, guess what? This tech is actually usable. That it's not putting out bullshit responses to stimuli.
into some of the stuff like the radiation of gene stuff. I think it'll give you'll be interested in it. It'll be a good lens.
Give me a top 10 reading list after.
Okay, sure. I'll give you a few right off the bat, which is the number one, David Reich, Who We Are and How We Got Here.
Yeah, that's good.
Right?
I've read it.
Okay, read that. Okay, and then I'll find some more for you. I think Matt Ridley's book is good. Dawkins's original book, The
I'll just turn them down a little bit.
Selfish Gene, is very good. Basically, the entire genetic lens on humanity is going to come back. And the reason it's coming back is, like, in many ways, it's just another way of thinking about it. If communism was based on economics denial, wokeness is based on genetics denial.
Yes.
Right? And both ideologies were simultaneously obsessed with this and then also in denial of basic principles. Like communism was obsessed with economics.
Yeah, Lloyd Davis, I'm not saying that the fucking soap dispenser has a camera and it's inside, it's like, black person detected, abort soap dispensing process. What I'm saying is that the people who designed it in such a way that it did not accommodate for black users, which is a choice and a huge, colossal blind spot when you're making a device that's going to be used by white and black people. This shouldn't be difficult for you to understand, but creating a product that effectively makes a whites-only bathroom is a huge racist problem. And I feel like it shouldn't be that difficult for you to understand. Unless you're just actually being just colossally pedantic about like, well, motion sensors are technically different, but you're now talking about an infrared sensor, and like, I just have to tell you to get your fucking thumb out of your ass, okay? Like, actually engage with the content. Near IR doesn't see color, but melanin also absorbs near IR. Exactly. You get it. Everyone else gets it.
But it denied that like profit existed, and because or that the profit was a necessary evil or even a good. And so everything was pathologized. Every instance of profit was somebody scamming the other guy. And so they broke the concept of starting a business, and they broke the concept of
another example of how technology can have racial bias implemented into it, potentially unintentionally. Police facial recognition technology can't tell black people apart because the AI that powers it does not have the ability to see black faces adequately enough to tell when black people are different people, because it regurgitates the bias of police into the results. Essentially, this sort of technology in the real world, when implemented beyond a lab, leads to black people disproportionately being profiled.
The price system and supply chains and individual self-interest and so on and so forth. And the wokes deny that genetics exists, so they get all the way to denying that.
I'm sorry, woke people deny that genetics exists? I don't think that's correct. As one of the wokes.
XX and XY exist and so on and so forth, which would have been super controversial to say even 2 years ago.
It's still not controversial to say now, and it wasn't controversial to say that chromosomes exist 2 years ago either.
But is now actually feasible. By the way, when I say 2 years ago, I mean literally 2 years ago. You know why?
Oh, I was there. I saw this process where I was reading the books when this came out, where like 5 to 10 years ago, saying that stuff like race or sex or whatever had biological bases, that was socially taboo. And now
no one has ever said that race isn't predicated on things like skin color. Nobody has ever said that sex isn't like related to your biology. No one has said that. But I'm willing to bet that on the concept on the topic of race, he's talking about the genetic reality of like IQ differences. Like he's doing some like race science bullshit. You know, making appeals to pseudoscience that has been debunked for like centuries. You know, when he's talking about this, I get the distinct impression like he's not talking about what he's trying to seem reasonable by rephrasing. Yeah, he's talking about fucking phrenology over here. You know? Lloyd Davis, if you work in tech, you're the reason we have these biased technologies. Because I've been pretty clear and pretty concise with exactly the problems. I've even provided you with links going over the problems from reputable like engineering schools. And you're still being like, well, I work on the tech and it couldn't possibly be racist. And it's like, well, actually, maybe you need to look in your heart instead. Maybe you just are unable to understand because you've got your own biases going on that won't even let you catch something that you might be putting into your own work. Something to think about for you.
You look at the genetic charts, almost all traits are at least half genetic. How fast you drive, what music you listen to, where you go on vacation. And the twin studies are absolutely incredible here, where you'll take people who are separated at birth and they have similar genetics or the exact same genetics, and they'll give their dog the same name, they'll vote for the same political party. It's ridiculous stuff. I get the impression you weren't going to say what I just said, though, so continue, please.
Also, I don't believe that you work in tech, considering I don't think you understand how an infrared sensor works. Because the thing you just described is not how an infrared sensor works.
Yeah. Well, so actually 2 or 3 things. One is that wokeness has vanished, but the other thing is genetics has advanced, right? And the premise that they had, which was incorrect, or which is, I shouldn't say incorrect, which is no longer correct, is that genetics is immutable. Now genetics is mutable. We can actually do gene therapy on existing human beings to change their genes. The initial clinical trials are out there with like sickle cell and so on and so forth, right? So I'm not saying it's easy yet, but like,
man, it's so crazy how they will oscillate from doing like just rank transphobia to, yeah, you know, we can change the genes of anything. We can do anything to the DNA. And it's like, oh, okay, you guys just really want to do the transphobia, even when you also want to talk about how you can fundamentally change the building blocks of your body, huh? It's fucking nuts.
Like with CRISPR, Cas9, genetics is advancing, right? And editing of your genome is becoming more feasible, right? Number one, that changes the ethics around it, right? Because remember my thing about how some people have lactase persistence and so on, right? There's a company, for example, called Variant Bio that's looking around the world for all of these X-Men that have, they may not phrase it in that way, but like people who have amazing mutations that give them, you know, for example,
yes. If Charles Xavier was a anarcho-capitalist, perfect.
Resistance to this disease or tolerance of this drug or the ability to metabolize this food, you know? Imagine, for example, this is actually there's, to give a concrete example, there's like 3 different mutations that confer altitude tolerance. So the Nepalese, Andeans, and Ethiopians, the 3 main populations that evolved genetic adaptations for high altitude living, developed different solutions to the same challenge, right? So Nepalese, mutations in EPAS1 that reduce hemoglobin concentration. And so this is increased blood flow, right? Okay. Andeans, they have mutations in genes like EGLN1, and so they have increased oxygen carrying capacity in the blood. And Ethiopian highlands, it's genes involved in the cardiovascular system, and it's different from both the Tibetan and Andean populations, and maybe it's like changed in nitric oxide production, right, and blood vessel dilation, right? So each of those are 3 independent adaptation over thousands of years of living at high elevations. Now, here's the thing. If you're able to have volunteers from each population and they go and sequence their genomes, you could stack those 3 variations.
We will create the Ubermensch. It is destined. We will genetically create Jesus Christ's second coming. This is genuinely some like Wolfenstein the New Order type shit. Like they're fucking doing Wolfenstein as the bad guys for some reason.
To maybe have, you know, a group of people that could live on the tallest mountains and have no problem,
Yes.
right? And so that just shows a concept where, there's almost certainly similar kinds of things for heat tolerance. Not certainly, there are. Heat shock proteins and so on differ between people. For cold tolerance, and this is a big one, radiation tolerance, okay? Because there are bacteria that we know, like Deinococcus radiodurans and others, that have evolved to live in, environments where they keep getting hit by, radiation. They grow in like nuclear reactors and stuff like that, crazy adversarial environments. And
this is how we get super mutants from Fallout. Just as an FYI.
They have mutations that keep repairing their genome. Okay, so they're radiation resistant. Why is all that important? Well, if you're going to live on Mars, right, you're probably going to have like a
hell yeah, gene therapy for everyone going to Mars. Let's go. You can eat the dirt now. We gave you the worm gene. Now you can eat dirt. Go to Mars. We'll make you able to eat dirt. You don't need a spacesuit anymore. We gave you the dirt genes.
Human population that has had quite a lot of genetic and or cybernetic upgrades to actually be able to tolerate the environment of Mars, just like we've evolved for the Earth, we'll have to evolve again for Mars, right? And so now we can actually talk about all the different
Yeah, he I think he reinvented cancer, indeed.
different types of mutations. Gradually, we could talk about this, that people have around the world that give them different kinds of superpowers. And these are digital, right? That's the cool part. Do you know, let me explain this.
No, tinfoil slacks. When we get to Mars, we'll find the secret underground alien compounds. Because we'll be eating the dirt and going underground. We'll awaken the great worm.
It's actually in a visual. Do you know what the GFP mouse is? You can take these kinds of mutations and you can transplant them across species to make, go ahead.
Oh, this is cool. Just keep going, please.
Yeah. So you can make mice glow in the dark, okay? Which is crazy. It's the GFP mouse. And this is actually a very
Yeah, we should do that. We should do that for humans too. Yeah. What could the downsides be?
very common. This has been true for more than 20 years, right? Actually, I don't remember when it was invented, but it was decades ago because even when I was in grad school, we had this, right? And so you can, for example, have a mutation where you use GFP as what's called a reporter gene, where like you feed the mouse something and it glows because that metabolism, it's like you see that it's now metabolizing glucose and it glows, and then it shuts down when it's no longer doing that. Does that make sense, right? So you can see when a particular protein is turned on, and the intensity of it may sometimes correlate to how much of concentration there is. Point being that like jellyfish and mice are separated by a massive evolutionary distance, but you can still copy paste code from jellyfish all the way into mice, right? And so like humans are separated by
That's true. We can also copy-paste genetic material from bananas into humans. That's right, it's time for us to get the first banana-human hybrid. We will have peels that will protect us from the cruel outside conditions and keep our soft innards safe.
much less evolutionary distance than jellyfish.
Banana
so
man!
You could copy-paste not just lactase persistence, but altitude tolerance. You could just take like this. The best things out there, probably copy-paste them. Probably, I mean, I shouldn't say probably. You'd have to measure the side effects on each thing, okay? Because there might be side effects, often there are. But you could probably do it with some engineering, right? That's what engineering is. You know, you look at the upsides, you look at the downsides, and you add.
We will create with this banana-based technology, banana organelles that we can use to create a new kind of hybrid technology. Part technology, part banana. And thus, we will create the very first operational banana phone.
Corrections and so on and so forth. And you could take the best of humanity and pull it together. That's something that is a new kind of thing. And the reason I say all this is we have to think about what the world is going to look like. Actually, I'd love your thoughts on this. So in my view, American empire is now just ending. But I'd like to hear your thoughts, and I'll tell you why I think that.
Well, okay. All right. Just apropos of nothing, American Empire's ending. Let's talk about it. Okay. Yeah. Let's. We're an hour in. Sure.
I have a thought I want to throw in there before I forget it. But One of the interesting
Craig
principles is
Hornick,
that in
thank you for the
to jump
$2
back to
super
the
chat.
earlier theme, is that in the philosophy of alchemy, not technologically progressing is morally evil, because the purpose of the universe is to grow and to advance. And so if you don't grow and advance, the universe and God punishes you against those who do. And so the process of evolution, you are morally obligated to improve. And the first step of that is taking responsibility. You have to realize, you have to take responsibility. And this is, the Vitruvian Man, the painting by Leonardo da Vinci?
Yes, 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 yes. Yep.
A human body with all outlaid in each direction with a circle drawn around it. That's based in this philosophy as well, where it's you take responsibility for your physical body, you understand your physical body and its limits, and once you take responsibility for your body and your life, you realize what you can and can't do. You assess the situation, and then you try to attain mastery. So if we want to do an alchemical analysis of this, we would say, okay, we have AI, we have genetic engineering. It's now our moral responsibility to understand said
Yeah, we need okay, yeah, all right, let's fuse alchemy with the AI. Let's do it.
technologies as much as possible because because if we're going to decel from this perspective, it's morally wrong. And you're also going to cut yourself off from the force of history and get destroyed by someone else who isn't going to decel. So it's not a choice to decelerate, but you have to understand the technology, master it. And then the final bit of it is that in alchemical philosophy, you master it in order to increase life charge as much as possible, to allow.
And once your life charge has filled up its meter, you can conduct your ultimate ability. Now, some people's ultimate ability might be incredibly destructive, while others might be able to revive their entire party. It depends on who you are and what your ultimate may be.
As much flourishing of life as possible, because life force is that which further multiplies according to its own desire. So when you produce life force, you're producing something that's self-generative.
That's right. And as we all know, the best way to produce life force is to cast a level 2 vampire spell on your sword. That will allow you to generate life force as you attack, leeching the life out of your enemies and into yourself. It's a foolproof method to tank your way through any fight.
And thus is capable of continuing to create independent from itself. And what I find interesting about this is that when we look at this new incredible technology, almost no one's genuinely interested in what it can accomplish because people are looking at the negatives. People aren't looking at the positives. And the first people.
There are no positives at this point in time. There are literally no upsides. AI has ruined everything it has touched. It's ruined operating systems. It's ruined Google search results. It's ruined your autocorrect on your phone. It's ruined your ability to email. It's ruined your ability to trust information that you can find online. It's ruining books as we speak, as people publish paperbacks written by AI. It's ruined basically everything it's touched, while simultaneously thieving from the entirety of human work. It is not useful to us in any capacity, save one, which is for venture capitalists to speculate on and try to time the market to make the most money possible. That's it. That is the only thing it is accomplishing.
People who are willing to take responsibility for this technology are going to do very well. And I want them to have this understanding of life charge, because another alchemical principle.
Because if you don't understand your life charge, you'll never fill up the meter, and you will be unable to use your ultimate abilities. And as we all know, eventually, without your ultimate, you will run out of mana points, the counterpoint of life charge. And once you run out of mana points, all you can do is attack, defend, and flee.
Is that what you do to others is what you will become. And so if, let's say, there's a group of tech bros who decide to turn this evil and they genetically engineer themselves into being hyper advanced beings who conquer the world and enslave, is that by
yes, like the Emperor of Man. We're back to Warhammer 40k.
enslaving the rest of the world, they will in process destroy their own characters, thus their empire will fall.
Jack, my life charge is near maximum. What button do I press to activate my alt? It's a hidden button that's included on every human body. You'll have to find it. Experiment. Have fun.
I want to jump into on this, which is the thing that's really very, very, very important about modern technology.
Are you Jojo Siwa? No, I just have my hair in a bun.
Is that actually the highest level of profit comes from, in a sense, global egalitarianism, and here's why. You know, Apple sells like on the order of 1 billion smartphones, right? Like Google, Facebook, like these tech companies essentially serve almost every person on earth, or at least a comparable, let's call it a significant fraction of the people on earth are using these tech products. WhatsApp has literally billions of users, right? So you have like this is the thing that people don't get. Massive scale actually is the kind of thing that you want in technology because it makes the product better. Since, you know, a 1 in a million issue you're seeing 1,000 times a day, so you fix it, right?
Is he discovering economies of scale for the very first time?
When you've got massive scale, you can build larger factories and you get better profits out of it, better economy of scale, and so on and so forth. And in a very deep way, on the internet, we're all equal. Like that is to say, Larry Page has basically the same smartphone that you and I do, right? Like Warren Buffett has essentially the same Google or ChatGPT or whatever that you and I do.
Yeah, as an individual, sure. But also, these people wield a massive amount of money and influence and can utilize that to give themselves more of a platform, a louder voice, etc. They can do these things because they have more power and influence than you or I, right? That's it. Full stop. Like, those people can hire 1 million people to type on their phones to give themselves larger followings or bigger, more attention-grabbing headlines, the veneer of popularity, etc., etc., etc. All right? Like, no, Warren Buffett does not have the same ChatGPT you do because he can afford to hire a team of mentats that actually know what they're talking about. Yeah, I mean, like, but the other thing is, like, their experience on the internet is not the same as you or I. You know, like, when the Mercers want to get their message out to people online, they don't personally go and tweet it out. They hire an entire firm to be created in the form of like the Daily Wire to like spread their propaganda. Like it's not the same experience on the internet, and the power dynamic is not the same.
Right. And I know I'm doing reasonably well, but you know, like what I mean by that is like a kid in India, Africa, Latin America, a kid in the Midwest, like they have essentially the same smartphone, Google, internet experience. So the internet is hyper deflated and resulted in global equality. It is the universal basic income in the digital world, right? And so because of that, the premise that, oh, the tech guys, like the Elysium model is actually completely wrong. Like venture capital would back this to get to 1 billion people. I know that because I've done that. Like literally, for example, Ancestry.com or 23andMe, you can argue there's other issues with that, but like the companies I've helped co-found and create and so on, like they have millions and millions of people that we've sequenced or genotyped or what have you, right? The whole point is to get to massive scale. So now what happens is then the like far left person will come with a different thing, which is, oh, so you want to you want to take all the data, you want to steal all the data and so on and have it centralized. And I agree that that's also a failure mode, but we can actually deal with that too, where you can give data local genomics, right? Just like you have the LLM running locally on your data, right? You can have the genome locally on your computer and interpret it, right? That's just another bug to fix. Anyway, point is, I think that entire model of
the issue is there is zero incentive for a company to silo that information and zero reason for us to trust companies to properly and securely silo that information. there's like, I'm sorry, the track record of private enterprise as it relates to our personal data is terrible. Like every other day, there's like a data breach of unprecedented size and scale. And like the idea that like, oh, just trust 23andMe to keep your DNA data secret. No, you shouldn't do that. They are there to make a profit. They are not there to safeguard your data.
The capitalist greedily scooping everything to themselves is actually the opposite of how techno-capitalism works in practice. Like another way of putting it is, you may be too young to remember this. In the 90s, you remember this concept of the digital divide?
No.
Okay, the digital divide was, oh, only the rich are going to be able to afford the internet, but the poor will not, right? And that's so ludicrous to us today because the internet is often the only thing the poor can afford.
Yeah.
It's flipped. It's actually a really deep point. Like the internet is the most robust, like you may not have water or power or peace, right? You might be in a war-torn country, but cell phones still work because you can take video and then later get to a 5G connection and upload it, right? It's so robust, like because the internet was built to resist a nuclear attack. There's been a flippening where the digital world is far more robust, peaceful, inexpensive, egalitarian in a sense than the physical world. So it'll survive even when the physical world melts down. I mean, let me pause. There's more I can say about that. That leads to my next point as to, that's why I think we're at the end of American empire and its two heirs are China and the internet. But anyway, okay, let me come back. I want to give you the
Okay.
ball. We've both thought a lot about, from our study of the past, what the future.
Again, any analysis of like power dynamics that leaves out the billionaire class as a meaningful power locus is deliberately obscuring reality at best, you know, and at worst is, well, it's the worst, you know.
Is, right? And you have very similar conclusions to Peter Turchin, Ray Dalio, the fourth turning like guys, and so on and so forth, that we're in a time.
Oh man, dude. The fourth turning guys. Yeah, all right. Just casually mention that like it's something that makes him seem sane at all.
Of great and increasing instability, that some kind of civil war is coming to the West, and so on and so forth. Do you still think that? Why don't you elaborate on that? And we can link a bunch of your videos on that because I think they're pretty good.
Yes. Thank you. I still agree with that we are on the verge of global instability. And I've spoken about this before in many previous videos, but I liken it to the religious wars of the 1600s.
All right. Sorry.
Conclusions to Peter Turchin.
Peter Turchin. Turchin. Yeah, that's what I thought. So, Peter Turchin here has written a number of different books about end times, you know, the age of breaking, secular cycles, you know, the cycle of war, peace, etc. Again, one of these guys that puts forward that history is cyclical, the rise and fall is inevitable, etc., etc., etc. And then the next person,
Ray Dalio.
You know, notably, you know, Peter Dalio, Changing World Order, Why Nations Succeed and Fail.
The fourth turning like guys, and so on and so.
And the fourth turning, which is, again, like some Nazi shit. Like, it has its own Wikipedia page. And essentially, it's all about how, oh, well, the United States history goes in 80-year cycles, and the fourth cycle, it brings about the end. It brings about the calamity. That's it. That's it. It's just apocalyptic literature for, you know, conservatives. That's it.
So forth. That we're in a time of great and increasing instability, that some kind of civil war is coming to the West, and so on and so forth. Do you still think that? Why don't you elaborate on that? And we can link a bunch of your videos on that because I think they're pretty good.
Yes. Thank you. I still agree with that we are on the verge of global instability. And I've spoken about this before in many previous videos, but I liken it to the religious wars of the 1600s or the Black Death or the French Revolution, where you have these periods of global crisis that occur roughly every 250 years. And there's a bunch of statistical models you can use to predict them. But I agree with your point that the American empire is coming to the end. And I actually think the network will beat China too. I think of those three, the network is the one that's going to survive and win. Frankly, because I think the American empire and China's leadership are not good enough to match either. The American empire is clearly going to fall just because it's so incompetent and so self-destructive. And I don't think this is the end of the American people.
Yeah, the fourth cycle is the Kali Yuga. Yeah, there's a bunch of like shit baked into the fourth turning ideas.
I think the American people and America as a continent, I think that has the potential for incredible new stuff in the future. But the current regime, the current like ideology it holds, the current system of power, and I always conceptualize the American empire as Grand Central Station in New York. This just huge industrial Baroque building, and not literally Baroque, but huge and grandiose and that stuff. And for China, I don't think China can beat the network because China is in deceleration, where they're pushing against free speech, they're pushing against capitalism, and you can't push against those.
Again, this is where Rudyard constantly shows his ass, but especially when talking about like current events. You know, just especially like they're pushing against capitalism. China has like openly embraced capitalism. Like they're just like full on capitalist at the moment. It's capitalism underneath authoritarianism, of course, but it's still capitalism. They have literal billionaires in the country.
Emergent phenomena for very long until they snap back and bite you, because you fundamentally can't beat. I agree with your thesis. The network is going to beat the state because the network is just a so much vastly more efficient force. And the next age might look like a dark age with the breakdown of centralized power.
Hey, Chet, just out of curiosity, in a communist society that, you know, champions the working class, do they need to build suicide nets around their factories? No! If workers own the means of production, they're not working themselves to the point where they feel the need to throw themselves out of the factory to their death. God.
And I don't fundamentally know, but at the same time, it will be an age that will promote so much more creativity and freedom that even if centralized countries break apart, it will be an age.
This guy is so far behind. We're already on the fifth hollow turning of the subcontinent beneath Antarctica, where you can meet El Canter.
Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. And also, you know, at the very least, however, I'm streets ahead. If you don't know what that means, you're streets behind.
It will allow the ability for just, it'll be a breath of fresh air.
So, okay, here's how I think about this. I think that I don't think it's as simple as the network beats the state. I think that these are the two, like centralization and decentralization are the capitalism and communism of the 20th.
I love that he says, I don't think it's necessarily true that the network beats the state. He says in front of his book, The Network State in the background.
21st century. And what I mean by that is these are the two big forces that are in balance and sometimes winning, sometimes losing, that drive the 20th century. And let me explain why I call them China and the internet, okay? And let me go a little bit further. China is the billion-person centralized psionic superstate, and the internet, I think, will eventually be 1,000 million person network states. Maybe it's not exactly 1 million to each. Maybe the top one is 50 million, and the smaller one is like 100,000. Like it's probably going to be a power law, just like any tech company or like all the tech companies. And maybe India or something like that is in the middle, like a few other things are in the middle. And by the internet, I mean the English-speaking internet, because the Chinese internet is a closed system. And that's actually one of the most important things that China did is they zagged when everybody else zigged. Like basically all Chinese, the Chinese nation, state, and network are all in a full stack thing. Do you know what I mean by that? Like the Chinese, go ahead.
It's a unified.
What are they talking about? They're talking about the China's firewall, like the break between China's internet and the United States internet, which, you know, it's not all it's cracked up to be, because you can still use our internet to talk to people in China. You can, and vice versa. Like people from China can still talk to us on the internet. Like that, it's not quite so impenetrable at all, like it's being made out to be here.
System in which the internet, the government, the ruling class, the economy are all concentrated into a single authoritarian structure.
That's right.
There's just effectively a lot more surveillance happening on the Chinese internet.
Right. And the thing about this is you have to, in my view, you have to steelman it and understand its strengths before you can hope to compete with it.
We've reached pencil sharpener levels of there's no right side of history, while standing next to his book, The Right Side of History.
We really have. Apropos of nothing, also Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. Earlier today, my partner mentioned that, you know, that guy that talks real fast without saying anything. And I knew that she was talking about Ben Shapiro, but also, like, that description could apply to at least, like, 5 or 6 of the guys that I routinely talk about on my channel and make fun of. Like, it just made me, like, stop and go, yeah, these people really keep digging themselves new holes, you know?
My idea is that every 250 years, you see an alternating between, so the secular cycles, periodic periods, I repeated there, you have cataclysmic time periods where the old order crashes. Then you have a 250-year period where there's two ideologies that fight each other, another period another cataclysm. So the last 250 years is the right versus the left, which is the French Revolution till today. Then you have the 30 Years' War.
This is so fucking arbitrary. Like, I'm sorry. Like, the last 250 years has been the French Revolution. And now, like, you could also say the last 250 years has been, I don't know, the age of inoculation. You know, like, you could just, like, go real fucking nuts with what you're talking about. It's astrology for freaks. Exactly! That's why I make the comparison to, that's why I make the argument that what is happening here is a building up of Nazi esotericism, right? Like, I talked about this a while ago, and I talk about this a lot with Whatifalthist in particular, but and especially some of his really weird stuff. Irascended Kitten, thank you for the 2 $10 donos. I very much appreciate it. And Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 2 tier 1 subs. My god. Thank you all so goddamn much.
I saw Graham Hancock spout bullshit and I think I can do it too, for $500, Alex.
Nazi esotericism is essentially the embracing of a variety of different, you know, pseudoscientific and religious beliefs in order to create a kind of new ideology that is, you know, contradictory. It doesn't really make sense, but it is kind of the official line that, like, holds everything else together, you know? It is kind of a final form for state-sponsored pseudoscience, you know? And the rejection of, you know, empiricism at all, right? And that's what this is all about. That's what they're doing here. Whatifalthist specializes in effectively rejecting empiricism and trying to go into these, like, bizarre tangents for no reason. Well, again, what we're seeing here is Balaji Srinivasan, a 100 millionaire who is in the same circles as Peter Thiel, etc., trying to create a tech version of that Nazi esotericism with Rudyard's help, because Rudyard just openly talks about Nazi esotericism. What was it? Oh, here.
I am very proud of the mental horsepower you have.
Wrong button.
The spirits like to convey the message that you should mentally see me as Gandalf.
There you go. But this is why having a mind that is capable of comprehending
Google debunkers
is really important. Because you need to be able to Google debunk this shit in real time, because none of it holds up to the even the slightest bit of scrutiny. Not one bit of it, you know? I wonder what China will be like in 10 years, Peepo Trek. Indeed, indeed.
Until the French Revolution. And these are all crises that destroyed the previous social structure, the previous governments. They often killed, a third to half of the populations of the countries involved. So 30 years war until the French Revolution is commercialism, is mercantilism versus capitalism, as symbolized in Britain versus France. The Black Death to the 30 Years' War is Protestants versus Catholics. Then the fall of the Frankish Empire.
Again, this only makes sense if you're talking about one particular part of the world, because other parts of the world had stuff going on too. Now, I do want to point out, we are 3 hours deep into this. It has been 3 hours since we started this journey into madness. If you're getting anything out of this, hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, do the things that help the channel. Consider helping me to pay my medical bills from the brain damage that I am incurring by going through this with you.
Until the Black Death is the church versus the state. So my predictor for, and I agree with you that the 21st century, because these crises take 70 years. So from my understanding of historic cycles, we'll have a crisis in the 2020s, then another one.
Again, historic cycles are all bullshit. It's just all fucking bullshit. Like, everything he's doing here is just as real as, like, numerology. It's just arbitrary, like, pattern recognition gone awry. There is nothing baked in that says, oh, in 70 years your country has to die. Like, it's just stupid.
In the 2090s. And so my understanding of that would be, it will be a gradual mutating from the right versus left, from materialist
I'm sorry,
to
the Rust Bard.
idealist. And so materialist to idealist, for those that don't understand it, is idealism is that reality is contained within abstract concepts, and materialist is that reality is contained within physical things. And it
meh equals mashup English Hindi. I see.
wouldn't surprise me if it's decentralized network versus state, if that's the correlation, because states always make materialist philosophies. And if you're operating off an abstract concept like a network, like where it's difficult to articulate and it's highly complex. And there's theories that you can predict a certain civilization's religiosity based off how abstract their money system is. Where the more
like part of the issue here is that, like, he's talking about states, right? Nation states as a concept didn't really emerge in a geopolitical sense until, like, the mid 1600s. So sometime around the idea of, like, the Treaty of Westphalia, right? And, like, his idea of, like, oh, well, nations and states go through 70-year cycles, that doesn't make any sense at all. You can see history repeat itself. History repeats itself because, oh, that empire died, and this empire could be dying. Like, it's not relevant when the reasons for empires like rising or falling are not the same. The reason Rome fell is not why European or English empire fell, and it's not why American empire is dying. It's not relevant really to the discussion, and it's not based around arbitrary cycles of time. But we do similar things sometimes because we are human beings.
The more abstracted the money system is, the more likely the society is to have a a stronger religion, just with the way I could explain the argument, but it's relatively complex.
Yeah, actually, I haven't heard this before. Please explain that argument. Go
So
ahead.
this is from David Graeber's book Debt, and he's part of the leftist anarchist school that I find interesting. I often circle back to leftist anarchists as a conservative populist. And so
I think he's wrong on some things, but he's interesting. Yeah, keep going.
Yes.
Yep. Many things he's wrong on, but interesting.
Leftists are really bad at anthropology because they often shove these very immature
Says the man who says he only trusts anthropologists from prior to the 1950s.
notions of human nature, where they'll think that tribals don't wage war. Every people in human history wage war. They're misogynistic, they're religious, they're hierarchical, and the left covers that up. But David Graeber says that 1500 until World War I was gold. Gold was the main currency. And so
Yeah, because nations used the gold standard. Yeah.
with that, you saw the rise of materialist rational ideologies. And it's comparable to the Greco-Roman classical world, where in both the Greco-Roman classical world and in the modern period, if you're in a society with a certain amount of currency, where it's a very set gold thing, is that you will develop rational worldviews based off stuff like counting and making calculations in philosophy. And you saw for both the modern world, you saw the decline of religion and the rise of science and philosophically induced ideologies. And then
I gotta be honest with you, like, this is, like, papering over, like, so much, like, the transition from feudalist economies to, like, mercantilist economies to capitalist economies, and, like, those transitions are really important. They're a really big deal, because mercantilism is the acquisitive, like, ideology that he's talking about, and it's not the same as capitalism, because mercantilism was all about you colonize other places so you can bring back the raw material wealth of those places to your home country to be turned into stuff. Like, your home country is where you do your manufacturing, your artisanry, your various refining of those goods into the stuff people use. And that in essence, right? And so, like, when he's talking about, like, everyone valued gold, not necessarily gold at all, you know? There were, like, the emphasis was on whatever kind of material wealth you could bring back and rework into something more valuable. And then you hoard that wealth. Mercantilism was the precursor to capitalism. Yeah. Sorry if I was overbearing. You're Ascended Kitten, not at all overbearing.
in the Greco-Roman world, you saw the same thing, where people forget there was atheism and agnosticism in the ancient world, but there was a significant amount. Meanwhile, in the ancient world before the Greeks and the Romans, before the Axial Age, as well in the medieval period, people predominantly operated off money systems based off script and social context, where in medieval Europe, as an example, you would have they operated off credit, where there are these highly complex credit systems because there wasn't enough gold to manage the economy, where you have a system of IOUs that operates as money. And same thing with the ancient world before 500 BC. And in both, you see highly religious.
I mean, no, not really. Like, on like a individual level, you would get feudalism didn't really operate in that way. Feudalism was a relationship between the lord and, like, the serfs that worked his land. Like, it didn't work in the same way as, like, a circulating money supply based on IOUs. That's not really how that functioned at all.
Societies, because in order to maintain the IOU contracts, you have to have a highly cohesive social structure where you have to enforce social ties, and religion does that to maintain the IOUs. In a system with a set currency, you'll have more rationality and philosophy because the financial system is based off counting and numeric assessment.
Interesting. So So it's funny, but
Yeah, like people paid each other in like goods. Like if you had excess, produce, if you had excess craft goods or skills that you or your wife could bring to the table, like mending or etc. Like those were things that you could leverage to trade within the community, but it wouldn't necessarily be IOUs. You'd be trading like material goods.
because those two forces, like vectors, sometimes they can support each other on this direction, but oppose each other on this direction, right? That's like in physics, like forces. So what I think of when you say that is, like going back to the God state network concept, God and the religion helps create a social group, like a ideological.
Well, also, Janussi, sorry, the font color was a bit weird. Merchants did operate on credit in that era. They had banking families, so the trust was in part based on familial connections. Yeah, but that's a system that differed very much from the general economic system of a region, right? Like, the economics of, like, a serf town would not be the same economics that guided the actions of, like, a cargo ship trading family, and like their relationship with banks would be very different than the relationship like a serf might have with the banks. Also, banks did have advanced IOU systems, that's true, but that was generally based on, and only reserved for traders. It wasn't reserved for like day-to-day activity. It was reserved for people who were embarking on like investments to like trade in the Far East or something like that. So that's true. That being said, most people did not have access to banking, and also banking was fucking batshit because every fucking bank was issuing their own essentially currency that was not good at other banks or minimally good at other banks, which in turn led to colossal economic crises throughout Europe. But I guess it depends on whether you're putting emphasis on like merchant, acquisition of wealth, or you're putting emphasis on the creation of wealth by the serf class. And I guess I was looking at that through the serf class lens because they're doing the day-to-day work of keeping the lord and everyone else alive.
Boundary of all these people are the believers, like Christendom or the Ummah. That's a group, and then within that group you have another social technology of money, right? And so some in this direction they combine where they all believe the same thing, they trade amongst each other, but also they oppose in another direction where you'll have quite a lot of priests oppose the merchants and vice versa. That's in the modern era, that's like media versus tech. The priests versus the merchants is basically that, right? It's like
yeah, like I don't know, like David Graeber is great. I love that. That's a great book. You all should read it. It's really good stuff. But it is extraordinarily more complicated than how they're talking about it right here.
Those who believe in quote God versus those who believe in quote money, and of course you could rephrase that to those who are actually numerical and realistic versus those who are unrealistic and just don't understand human nature. They're so anyway, coming back, I think a simplification is network over state. I think the just to our earlier discussion, it's not the network always.
God, the fact that he's talking in front of a book that says the network state, it's not always network over state, even though it's literally over state in the background.
Beats the state. It's the network can beat the state. But I think that in different geographical theaters, we're seeing different outcomes. And what I mean by that, for example, in China, the state beat the network. Like that is to say, the party did basically go and have Jack Ma deplatformed and, it took his company and so on and so forth. They have controlled the Great Firewall. They have all the tech companies within their sphere. The state is dominant and the network is secondary. But what just happened in the USA is the network beat the state. That's to say, the tradition of, yeah, there's a good to it, but I think those two poles will be American anarchy and, or let me put it as left and right, American anarchy and Chinese control, right? So this is where state over network, and this is where network over state. Network over state, there's good to it, which is freedom, but there's bad to it, which is disorder, right? Like nobody can.
Finally, the Chaz Freedom Zone will overtake the entirety of America, just as the Portland protesters predicted.
I mean, every variety of bad behavior that you can imagine, from, like every kind of ill that was kept back by a centralized power has now burst out. Because, one of my concepts also is the internet increases variance, meaning it removes the middleman, but it also removes the moderator, the mediator, right? And so those sometimes have a bad connotation, a good, like the middleman is just taking a cut off of you, so he's bad, fine. But the moderator or the moderator, you might say, oh, he has power over you, or he's bad, we want censorship resistance and so on. But the mediator, somebody who can say, look, let's see things in the middle. The internet, in a sense, like destroys that center because everybody's just connecting peer to peer, and there's nobody who can be a traffic cop or what have you. And of course, that was abused for, like, how old are you? You're like 27, something like that, 25?
About to turn 24.
23. Okay, fine. So
Such a babby.
You really don't remember. I mean, actually, you're obviously you read a lot of history and so on and so forth, but viscerally, the big difference in the 80s and 90s, like, so I was born in 1980, actually, right? And 1985, 1995, 2005, up to 2015, I would consider them basically the same, even from the Western context. Like, obviously, they were radically different for somebody who is in the Soviet context. 85 and 1995 were radically, those were times of great change, right? But in the Western context, and I want to return to that point because their civilization did end, right? Like, Soviets no longer existed. Russians did, Estonians did, but Soviets didn't, In that sense, people sometimes use the term USian. Have you heard that before? Right? Like, so the USian is essentially the distinction of, like, the US empire kind of, person, right? So the USian, I don't think exists past 2035 or 2040. I don't know how long it's going to take, but right? But that the USian is to the American as the USSR or the Soviet is to the Russian, right? So to speak, right? Okay. So
God, these guys think they're so smart. And, like, their room is just slowly filling up with methane from their own farts. It's crazy.
85, 95, 2005, up to 2015, basically life was the same. Like, the daily rhythms of life are the same. But the last 10 years have been a total breakdown of Western society. The English-speaking internet, like the level of chair-throwing stuff that's happening. And it is, have you ever seen the Simpsons episode, like beer, the cause of and solution to all of man's problems?
No, I haven't.
It's meant to be a joke because obviously getting drunk is not actually a solution, but it's like a Homer. So the internet, though, the cause of and solution to all of man's problems, much of what's happening is mediated by the network and by the internet. Like, you have social media. And actually, you know what elected Trump?
Twitter. Media.
But Twitter also, that's right. So Twitter also elected Bolsonaro, and it also elected Orban and Modi. It's a global phenomenon. It's not a local phenomenon. It did Brexit, right? Like, basically, Twitter led to essentially a counter, like the same as the Arab Spring. The American Spring happened, right? And that's why the counter-revolution was to try to censor Twitter, censor the internet, stop speech, and so on. But I could see that was not going to...
Ah, yes, the American Spring, where, conservatives elected a fascist. Truly, they struck a blow for freedom when they elected a new Führer.
Work because the collateral damage meant taking voice away from lots of people who already had it, right? Like, there's a huge swath of people who are not Trump supporters.
You see, Homer in this cartoon made by animators is, in fact, the Dragon of Chaos incarnate. For what is more chaotic than a dragon imbibing of an alcoholic liquid that can make it drunk? Unpredictable, even to its own being. That is the nature of the Dragon of Chaos.
They were like online influencers, and they didn't want to get censored and deplatformed and so on and so forth. So that was like a lot of implicit pushback against this that I think is underrated, right? And there's only so much energy there could be for censorship. And once they couldn't hold the genie in the bottle anymore, it just burst out. And Elon took X, and now we have what we have. Now, I think things might have gone differently. It wasn't easy for
But are dragons trans? Well, in order to answer this problem, I went on to the World Wide Web, the information superhighway, and I Googled, using a search engine, dragon, chaos, bad. And the number one result really made me worried about what China is going to do to our men. They're already milking the men. And now they are using these bad dragons of chaos to do unspeakable acts to our American men.
Elon to take X. I think the state had a fighting chance, but it lost. And I actually don't think there's going to be an easy... I think we're going to... the war... Of course you know this. The Warring States period, warlord era. Yeah, why don't you tell people about that?
So I can see where you're going here, because I would take the chaotic network over the state, because only in chaos is there creativity and vitality, where...
Yes, you understand, Rudyard. Only in chaos is creativity achieved. And as we know, the Dragon of Chaos is trans. Only trans people can be creative now. But their creativity is destructive. Think of all the poor milkmen. They have been milked dry. Our boys, our precious American men, have been milked dry.
The state naturally makes people weak, and it naturally crushes creativity, and it naturally crushes just the human spirit. And if you have a warring states period in America, that's going to create a new breakthrough in American creativity and culture. And it's brutal, but that's what drives the human experience. In the warring states period, and this is something that happens in every major civilization. Civilizations have cycles, and China's warring states period was from 500 BC until roughly 200 BC. And it started out with over 20 Chinese states constantly fighting each other with noble warfare. And it was very genteel. And over time, it became this horrific trench warfare that destroyed and leveled China's previous social structure. And it resulted in the creation of this brutal totalitarian state that was Qin, which did unify China, but it did so at the expense of a lot of Chinese culture, where they were as close as you could get to Stalin 2,000 years ago. But on top of that, the Warring States period was the time period in which almost all of the seminal parts of Chinese culture formed. It's when Confucianism and Taoism formed, when the Chinese bureaucracy formed, and the Chinese ethnic identity formed. So it's this duality of chaos at the same time as creativity. And what I'll also say is that I expect the network to win over the scale of centuries. I agree with you that the next century will see conflict between the network and the state, but I think ultimately the network will be able to defeat the state around the world.
It's so this is something which I think I can see theaters in which one beats the other, but again, there's to go the Chinese saying there's the empire long united must divide, long divided must unite. That's the way of the world, right? And so what I think happens in the West. So here's my 1, 2, 3, 4, and maybe you can think about this, and we can do another episode or something at some point. Okay, so they're shutting down the funding for the blue empire of embassies and NGOs abroad. And the left, of course, sees this as helping, the downtrodden or whatever. And the right sees this as just wasting money. Okay. But what it actually is it's the flow of funds that maintains American empire. It's basically payola to all of these basically this blue CIA around the world. Okay, so shutting down the blue empire of embassies and NGOs, which will have the first order effect of reducing American influence on the left around the world. And this is massive leverage because a few 100,000 for a color revolution or a few million for a color revolution gains billions of dollars in purchasing power for U.S. treasuries and other things. Go ahead. Right?
Oh, I'm just smiling.
So then,
I have something to say though. So, it reminds me of a conversation I had with a Saudi Arabian friend of mine, and I called him up and I said, it's funny, you as a Saudi who's part of the Islamic world.
There's like so much going on right now that's just like overwhelmed me into like a numb mush here. I'm still hung up on like him saying like the biggest thing of value in Chinese culture happened during the Warring States period. And it's like a lot of things that are important to Chinese culture happened during the Warring States period, but like China's been around for a long time. There's untold amounts of like Chinese culture that you aren't even touching, and like you're like, yeah, no, this is the one event where like most of their culture comes from. Like, what are you talking about? I don't know, like open any history book on China and like you'll find a lot of other really important moments culturally and historically.
And me as an American, we both hate the American empire because the Muslim world calls America the Great Satan. And I can definitely see why they'd think that when you look at we are funding things that they do not care or want about, and we are actively hurting the name of democracy in the West and freedom by pushing like trans in Saudi Arabia, which they have no interest in. And as an American, where my family
yes, the classic argument of, well, we would have embraced democracy, but trans people exist, so we must embrace fascism. You know that's stupid, right? Like you know that's stupid. Yeah, we would have gotten Saudi Arabia over to democracy by now, but trans people, you stopped it. All of you trans people, you kept a monarchy in charge of Saudi Arabia. Trans people always talking about monarchy this. Oh, yes, queen that. Yes, king this. That's right. That's all trans people talk about, kings and queens. If it hadn't been for that, democracy would have won out.
Family's been here since the Mayflower, and we helped carve up the frontier. The American empire is as mean to the ethnic Americans as it is to the people abroad who it destroys. And I think that's...
I'm sorry, the ethnic... The ethnic Americans genuinely don't know what he's talking about, and I worry that he's never going to explain that idea.
Ridiculous, and it's going to ultimately cause the death of the American empire.
So the ethnic Americans, indigenous people? Question mark? My guess is no, that's not what he means.
I like to say, how many people genuinely support globalism? If you polled people, and this is a great irony of the internet, that when the internet was first created, people thought we're going to bring everyone together, we're going to love each other. And then you actually talk to people and you realize, wait, we are very different. We don't like each other. And the world's a deep conflicted place because the managerial class was able to maintain all these lies. And as the managerial class's empire falls, we will continually see what they did was morally and more.
Yes, a psychotic dreamer. I am aware that this man is a white nationalist and a neo-Nazi. Yes, thank you.
Morally worse. And I can explain that more if you're interested, but I think the current managerial...
I want to agree with you and then argue with you on something, okay?
Yes.
And then maybe take this, okay? So the Muslim world, they have a beef with the American left, but also, of course, the American right for all the bombing and so on and so forth, the neocon wars, what have you, right? The thing about the Soviet Empire at the end was in a very similar situation where it was oppressing Russians at home, but it was also using Russians to oppress others abroad. Both were true, right? And so this late stage American empire, there's a lot of red Americans who are now super mad in it and want to tear it down. There's lots of people abroad who have also felt the lash. And the tricky part is both people feel like they're getting attacked by it. And I think on balance, the Red American is, in tearing down the American empire, they are going to probably regret it when it's gone, in the same way that Russians pine for the power of the Soviet empire. Like right now, hundreds of thousands of Russians are dying to just recover a few slices of Ukraine, right? On the other hand, Russians like the fact that they've got Orthodox Christianity back, that they've actually got 72% Russians in Russia. It was complicated where there's certainly a lot of gains. Obviously, Eastern Europe is way better off. The Baltics are way better off. And my view is it's similar. Like basically the more core American you are, the less net benefit you're going to get from the end of the American empire. The more on like Europe, like, colonies of the US will do better. It's very similar to the Soviet thing. The one other thing I would just say is on globalism versus nationalism. I'm going to write an article on this, right? Because I think, to use a leftist term, both of those are social constructs that I think are actually wrong in the way that people are using them. Like they have a value, but then you have to invert them. For example, you and I met through the internet. And in fact, all your audience comes through the internet. And in fact, insofar as people have a real community, a social network, that's going to be internet based. Like when they get up in the morning, they don't go down the street and knock on their neighbor's door and say, "Hi, neighbor," right? They post on the internet, "Good morning," right? Like that's their actual community. The lived experience is not America first, it's internet first. Deep point, I think, right?
No, it's not deep.
Riverboat Jack is going to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube and swishy streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, gaming, plenty more. Your sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord.